Okay, the purpose of this video is to practice some passage analysis from Frankenstein. Read the following passage from Letter 4 of Frankenstein carefully, taking time to annotate as you read. There is a set of multiple choice questions to follow. So remember, in Frankenstein, the first four letters are written as part of a frame for Victor Frankenstein's story. So Mary Shelley has a narrator, a guy named Robert Walton, who's an explorer looking for the Northwest Passage in the Arctic. He writes these letters to his sister Margaret just to check in, and he's going to describe a stranger in this passage in letter 4, and that stranger is Victor Frankenstein. And so what we see here is the last bit of the frame before we move into Victor Frankenstein's narrative in chapter 1. So really the purpose here is just to go through and walk you through my thought process. You'll see how I would annotate a text and how I think through a text while I read it. And then we'll create a separate video for working through the actual multiple choice questions. So we'll just jump right in. I said in one of my letters, my dear Margaret, that I should find no friend on the wide ocean. Yet I have found a man who, before his spirit had been broken by misery, I should have been happy to have possessed as my brother of my heart. Right, good. So, yet I have found a man before his spirit had been broken by misery. So here we have some characterization of Victor Frankenstein, and we know his spirit had been broken. We'll say he seems to be struggling. And he would have been happy to have possessed him as the brother of his heart, right? So we're relating this to Robert Walton. He seems to kind of relate or sympathize with him. I shall continue my journal concerning the stranger at intervals, should I have any fresh incidents to record. So it seems as if here we have one of these intervals, right here on August 13th. My affection for my guest increases every day. He excites at once my admiration and my pity to an astonishing degree. Right, so it seems here, right, we've got some feelings that exist. Robert Walton to Victor Frankenstein. How can I see so noble a creature destroyed by misery without feeling so noble a creature, without feeling the most poignant grief? He is so gentle, yet so wise. His mind is so cultivated, and when he speaks, although his words are cold with the choicest art, cold means selected, yet they flow with rapidity and unparalleled eloquence. He's got like a little man crush, it looks like, going on here. So these feelings for Victor Frankenstein, they're ones of deep respect, maybe even a little envious, but most importantly, he seems to admire Victor Frankenstein. He is now much recovered from his illness and continually on deck, apparently watching for the sledge that preceded his own. So this is, a sledge is like and here this context, he means a sled. And he's on the lookout, right? Apparently is on the lookout for something, perhaps the sled that was preceding his when Robert Walton found them. Yet although unhappy, he is not so utterly occupied with his own misery, but that he interests himself deeply in the projects of others. He has frequently conversed with me on mine, which I have communicated to him without disguise. These two seem to openly communicate. He entered attentively into all my arguments of favor and eventual success, and into every minute detail of the measures I had taken to secure it. I was easily led by sympathy, which he evinced to use the language of my heart, to give utterance to the burning ardor of my soul, and to say with all the fervor that warmed me, how gladly I would sacrifice my fortune, my existence, my every hope, to the furtherance of my enterprise. Okay, so this seems to be really important. Robert Walton reveals to Victor Frankenstein his burning desire to succeed, his ambition And having already read this text, you'll recognize that Victor Frankenstein is going to comment on that, right? It's a bit of foreshadowing. Of Victor Frankenstein's warning. One man's life or death were but a small price to pay for the acquirement of knowledge which I sought. One man's life or death were but a small price to pay for the acquirement of knowledge which I sought. Again, this leads back to his ambition that we were talking about before. For the dominion I should acquire and transmit over the elemental foes of our race. As I spoke, a dark gloom spread over my listener's countenance. Right? We have sort of a cause and effect here. So we can say Robert Walton tells his story, and Victor Frankenstein, this is our cause. And this is our effect, Victor Frankenstein grows gloomy. As if Victor Frankenstein hears this and is worried about it, right? He's going to start to, that'll be important, I think, as we get closer to the end of this passage. At first I perceived that he tried to suppress his emotion. He placed his hands before his eyes, and my voice quivered and failed me as I beheld tears trickle fast between his fingers. A groan burst from his heaving breast. I paused. At length he spoke, in broken accents. Unhappy man, do you share my madness? Have you drank also of that intoxicating draught? Hear me, let me reveal my tale, and I will dash the cup from your lips. This seems to be really important here. Right, so once again, it's already there. It's relatable to Robert Walton, right? Robert Walton senses that Victor Frankenstein can relate. And it seems like there's a bit of like a foreboding tone, right? Some warning here. Such words, you may imagine, strongly excited my curiosity, but the paroxysms of grief that had seized the stranger overcame his weakened powers, and many hours of repose and tranquil conversation were necessary to restore his composure. Having conquered the violence of his feelings, he appeared to despise himself for being the slave of passion. And quelling the dark tyranny of despair, he led me again to converse concerning myself personally. He asked me the history of my earlier years. The tale was quickly told, but it awakened various trains of reflection. I think that's important. It seems here Victor Frankenstein is using this conversation to reflect. I spoke of my desire of finding a friend, my thirst for more intimate sympathy with a fellow mind than had ever fallen to my lot, and expressed my conviction that a man could boast a little happiness who did enjoy his blessing. I agree with you, replied the stranger. We are unfashioned creatures, but half made up. If one wiser, better, dearer than ourselves, such a friend ought to be, do not lend his aid to perfection our weak and faulty natures. I once had a friend, the most noble of human creatures, and I am entitled, therefore, to judge respecting on friendship, right? So this idea, I once had a friend. Victor Frankenstein gives a preview of important relationship. You have hope in the world before you and have no cause for despair. But I lost everything, and I cannot begin anew. This seems to be significant here as well. So you can ask questions of the text, right? What did Victor Frankenstein lose? As he said this, his countenance became expressive of a calm grief that touched me to the heart, but he was silent and presently retired to his cabin. Oh, so they're leaving us in suspense. Even broken in spirit as he is, no one can feel more deeply than he does the beauties of nature. The starry sky, the sea, and every light afforded by those wonderful regions seems still to have the power of elevating his soul from earth. Such a man has double existence. He may suffer misery and may be overwhelmed by disappointments. Yet, when he has retired into himself, he will be like the celestial spirit that has a halo around him, And so here we have an allusion to metaphor, which compares Victor Frankenstein to an angel. Will you smile at enthusiasm I express concerning this divine wanderer? Again, we have some more sort of allusions here. You would not if you saw him. You have been tutored and refined by books and retirement from the world, and you are therefore somewhat fastidious. But this only renders you more fit to appreciate the extraordinary merits of this wonderful man. Yeah, he is got a serious man crush. Sometimes I have endeavored to discover what quality it is which he possesses that elevates him so immeasurably above any other person I have ever known. I believe it to be an intuitive discernment, a quick but never failing power of judgment, a penetration into the causes of things unequaled for clearness and precision. Add to this a facility of expression and a voice whose varied intonations are soul-subduing music. Right, so again, Robert Walton is just moved by his interactions with Victor Frankenstein. We'll stop the video there, and then we'll create another video for the multiple choice questions.